Welcome back to the Sports Show. Of course, the SANFL finals are just around the corner. Glenelg have had an unbelievable year. 17 wins in a row. They're up for 18. Clean sweep. Hasn't been done since 1914.
About to come to a screeching halt.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. We know they play Port Adelaide this weekend, but a man that has played 223 games for the Glenelg Footy Club, 2 premierships. He's coached them for a couple of years as well. Had a season with Hawthorn that he had to fight some injuries to get through. Been good enough in his busy lifestyle. Come in, Tony Symonds joins us. Tony, how are you?
Hello boys, nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
We want to talk about a little bit about your career in grand finals and then get to where you see Glenelg are currently at the moment and put your coaching hat on a bit and what advice you give them, mate. The two for you, the back-to-back ones, 85, 86. Can you remember the run into the 85 one? And they always talk about grand finals are different to any other game. What's different about it?
Well, funnily enough, I think there's a fraction of relief that you've got there because you think you're good enough. And there's the eternal disappointment of losing them. And we'd lost a couple. We'd lost many grand finals over the previous 15 years. Not that a lot of us younger blokes were involved in that, but I think the overriding emotion is that you're just not going to let the opportunity go. And probably prelim finals are a bit the same in a way because it's all or nothing and there's always casualties in prelim finals and some blokes don't get to play the following week.
Generally the hardest game is the prelim.
Yep.
That's the one. That's the toughest game, I think, the prelim.
And I think in those 2 years, I think 1 year we played in the prelim, might have been 86. I think in 85 we got straight through. But when you get straight through, you go and have a look following week and you hope they bash each other and you hope there's about 40 minutes of time on and there's only a 6-day break. And
isn't it funny, Simon, when you do go and have a look at those sides, they look good. They go, oh, well, they're looking all right. You're better off staying away. You're better off, not go and have a look at them. But I suppose your coach would say, hey, we need to go down and have a look at this team.
Yeah, you do, and you tend to probably try and watch the guy that you might be standing, see where he runs or how he plays and whether he sneaks out the back all the time like I used to do. Didn't used to do too much of the defensive stuff. That was sort of someone else's job. So, but you go and have do a little bit of homework and sort of, at the end of the day, you roll up and you're backing yourselves in anyway. All, the things that you can control, that's what you want to worry about.
Hey, mate, you touched on 85. Was it any different going into 86? For you? Because 85, you're saying you're just relieved you've got there a little bit, but now you've got that experience behind you. Did you approach 86 any differently?
Well, 85, I think we were reasonably, you'd probably call us the favourites. In 86, North Adelaide was certainly the favourites and they got straight through. And I don't know if you guys remember, it was a year Woodville came from sort of the bottom where they'd been and Blighty was coaching them and the whole state was barracking for Woodville. I think they'd beaten, might have even been Port and Nord in the first 2 finals.
They did.
They're on a bit of a roll and I don't know how many were there, maybe 30-odd thousand prelim final day and felt like, 23 of them were barracking for Woodville. So that was certainly very different and I know we were under pressure early and Woodville looked pretty good. Then once you've been there, as you guys know, you sort of still think you're a big chance to sort of get over the line. You still really believe you can, and you actually do believe it. So getting in there the following week, I was only talking to someone about this recently and I was really very confident when we got there in 86. I remember driving to the game. You drove yourself in those days, no buses or whatever, no breakfast together and kept the same routine. I remember driving up thinking it's a beautiful day, I'm going to play well, we're going to win. Everything was just a positive. There was no real nerves.
Was it because ain't bad.
Yeah, was it because you're backed up against North? I mean, North, you get them in 85 and then North again. Is there some comfort in, we beat these guys last year in the grand final?
Well, we had basically the same side of, well, except for Kernahan, McGuinness and who were pretty reasonable players. Kernahan and McGuinness dropped out and there was one of them, Michael Murphy didn't get picked. And we had Maxi Cruz come in, Kim Hosman come in. and one other guy who I can't remember. I'll get in the stride for that. But I think there was more about the fact that we were pretty settled. You know, I think both years we used under 30 players, and we knew each other's game, and certainly a little bit of the fact that we'd won previously, we know it's possible. You know, you sort of get to these finals and think, could we actually win one? You can have an element of, I wonder, or I'm happy to be there. And probably early 80s, some of us younger blokes were.
Mate, over 225 games or whatever for the Bays, you were a terrific player. You would have stood some great wingmen in that period, because there was great wingmen. I think every club would have had a gun wingman somewhere along the line. Have you got a person there that you think, not him again, or what? There could be a couple of them.
Probably Ronnie Haitley. Ronnie used to run further forward of the ball than I did.
Yes, he did.
You know, sort of shake hands at the start of the game, and that'd be about it. Until the end, shake hands again. That was sort of the way we played. I remember learning a lot early on from standing Phil Gallagher. I reckon it was sort of early 1982 or 83. And we're Nord Oval, 10 or 12,000 there, good atmosphere, and I couldn't find him. And I'm thinking, where is he? And he was over the other side of the ground and down back. I thought, I sort of never knew you could do that. So I sort of started learning off these guys. And of course, after you play for a couple of years, other sides work you out a bit. Yeah. So if you don't change your game every year or two, it's easy to cut you out of the game. Yeah. But standard blokes like Ando, you know, I was a couple of years older than Ando, but at Port Adelaide I stood, you know, Kim Kinnear and David Hutton and Phil Harrison and Ando and Brenton Cole and a few other guys that sort of came and went, and they were all different. They all had strengths and weaknesses, and you know, quite often I talked to Stephen Stretch quite a bit, and of course Torrens weren't brilliant at times when he started early to mid 80s, and Glenelg were going okay, and being on a wing it was quite easy to get on the end of it a bit if you're in a good side. So you sort of relied on a bit of support. But
those days it was, you know, on the wing, you're on the wing. If you wandered, you'd have the runner out.
Oh, depends a little bit. The one thing I do know, Baz, is that you basically stood the same bloke all day. Yeah. So if you felt like you were in good physical condition and that you were fit, you know, I just used to think quite often, well, this guy can stay with me for 2.5 quarters, but I don't reckon he can for 3.5. Yeah. So you sort of work to your strengths a bit. Some blokes are a lot more physical than I was, clearly, so they try and beat me up, and that was fine too. Yeah. My thing was keep running, sometimes just for no reason, because I knew eventually I'd catch up with them. So you had to think about it a bit and come up with ways and to not only contribute, but to have a positive input into winning games of footy.
I mean, I talked to some of the boys that played through the NBA era when Jordan was playing, and they said they often found themselves standing and just watching him. Whether they, you know, Tony Kukoc played with him, and he said when he first joined, he found himself standing and going, "Wow, that was impressive. Gee, that's good." Or then players that played against him have said, "I found myself doing the same thing." Did you ever find yourself moments in the game where you went, "Wow, that was good"? Here it could be an opposition player.
No, definitely. I remember, I think Blighty came back, I think it was 84, I don't really remember, and was captain coach and stood at full forward and yelled and screamed at all his blokes and kicked 124 or something for the year. Yeah. And no doubt, I mean, standing, you know, playing games for footy for 3 or 4 years against Russell Ebert, you know, sometimes you'd sit there and you'd remember watching him as a kid when Peter Marker would stand Russell Ebert all day. It was all like you'd pay the $8 or whatever it was to go and watch those two at it, and quite often you'd sort of watch and go, that was pretty amazing. Then you think, gee, I'm 40 metres away from where I should be. I'm supposed to be over there where my man just got the footy. So you wouldn't quite applaud, but you'd have a moment where you'd think about it.
Yeah. You know, you just mentioned a name there, Peter Marker. There's a player who I don't think got the cred that he really deserved. He was a much better player than what a lot of people.
He was one of the few that could contain Russell. One of the few.
I know Russ talked very highly of Peter Marker, but Russ talks highly of everybody.
I think when Glenelg went, this is before my time, but I was always there as a kid. You know, when we went defensive against Russell, I think David Holst used to follow him around a fair bit. When Marker played Ebert, it was first in, best dressed.
That's it.
I think Peter Marker ran second in the McGarry Medal twice.
I think he might have as well.
By not much. So he was a pretty amazing footballer, and he probably crawled by injury a bit the last couple of years. I think he badly broke an ankle once or twice, and that was sort of the end of him a couple of years before I started. But, you know, they were the... You know, everyone talks about the 80s, but the 70s was a fantastic era of football for me personally. You know, from the age of about 10 going and watching Port and Glenelg and getting Port Adelaide ladies hitting me over the head with footy budget spaz and
Yeah, and my mum does apologise for that, mate. 'Cause, you know,
there's some chance I deserved it.
she told me today to say sorry.
Sorry if I hit you that time. Hey, mate, let's get into the 20s. So the Bays are having a ripping year. I mean, it looks like they're going to do something pretty special if they can go all the way through, of course, undefeated, win the grand final. You've been in and out, seen a few of their games. What have you liked about the Bays this year?
Well, they seem very, very organised, very structured. That's a game these days, I guess. But I happened to go to the game last Friday night. They played West and, you know, Glenelg won by 6 goals and then they're up by 9 goals 10 minutes into the last quarter. Probably should have won by 12. Who knows? Credit to Westies, they came back. But I can tell you now, Glenelg were very organised and very professional. Everyone knows their role. And I know they do a lot of stuff, you know, even during the week where they talk to each other. And it's little things that happen around the club that, you know, they text each other about and say, look, we should be better at this. And it can be about anything, really. It can be about standard training or, you know, who's been in the weights room or who hasn't done whatever it might be, rehab. And I'm not that close to it. And I certainly wouldn't profess to tell Brett anything about what he should be doing because, unfortunately for me, he's won more games in his first 17 games than I did in my whole 2 years coaching him.
Yeah, come on, mate. Come on, mate. Your first game as coach of Glenelg, they belted Port by 92 points. You must have thought, well, there's a career. I should be the coach of the year. I will be the coach of the year. It didn't really work out that way.
As usual, Baz, I got ahead of myself. I think I turned around to Peter Carey, who was sitting in the box with me. He said, this coaching caper can't be that hard. How's this going? And what I didn't sort of realise at the time was the highlight of my league football coaching career was actually my first game. It was all downhill from there. Sadly, but that was a great night, and obviously remember that pretty well. I think there was 19 or 20,000 people there.
Yeah.
They gave away a lot of tickets. I think it was a Friday night. So that was obviously a highlight. But these guys this year are extremely driven, and there's probably a bit of belief there. I don't know, there's probably 10 or 12 or 14 of them that played 2 years ago when they got over the line and won the flag. So there's certainly a fair bit of belief. And, you know, you could look at it and say the pressure's growing. You know, they've won 17 in a row. I don't think the footballers really think like that. You sort of know what you've got to do, and it's about every attack on the footy. It's about every contest, and they'll just be thinking, you know, I think this week really Port will have a strong side at Alberton with the way they're going in their AFL side. There'll be blokes screaming out trying to get a game, and I don't think they've got many injuries. And to my way of thinking, whether Glenelg win or lose, what a fantastic game to play a week before finals.
Leading into finals, dead right, mate.
All right, Tony Symonds is our special guest. It's good that Baz has let go of the game that you beat him in your first coaching too, mate. He has not forgiven you for that. Really appreciate your time, mate. Good luck with the Bays in the coming up games. Stay with us. Greg Anderson, not too far away.